It begins quietly, not with violence, but with absence. You're 8 years old, watching someone who was supposed to protect you unravel in front of your eyes. Maybe they're crying on the kitchen floor. Maybe they're drunk again. Maybe they're just gone. Staring through you, lost in a world you can't reach. And something ancient stirs inside you. A small voice says, "If I don't take care of them, no one will." That's the moment childhood ends. Not with age, but with responsibility. You start tucking away your own needs to make room for theirs. You pour the juice, clean the mess, tell the jokes to make them laugh again. You become the one who keeps things together, the calm in someone else's storm. Adults call it being mature. But what it really is a child stepping into a role they were never meant to play. This is the story of the parentified child, the one who grew up raising their parents. It happens in homes filled with addiction, illness, depression, divorce, or simply emotional immaturity. When the adult cannot function as a parent, the child quietly fills the vacuum. They become the listener, the peacemaker, the problem solver. They remind their mother to pay the bills. They talk their father out of another fight. They tuck their younger siblings into bed while pretending not to notice the yelling downstairs. And the world applauds them. You're so responsible. You're such a little adult. You take such good care of everyone. But no one asks the most important question. Who takes care of you? Because while you were busy holding the family together, no one was holding you. Psychologists call this role reversal, and it's more than just growing up fast. It's a kind of emotional theft. The parent's unmet needs become the child's job to manage. You become their confidant, their therapist, their source of stability. You hear things a child should never hear. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "Your father doesn't understand me, but you do." "Promise you'll never leave me." Each sentence becomes a chain. Each secret you hold makes you older than your years. And you learn early that love is not about being cared for. It's about caretaking. You start measuring your worth by how well you can keep the peace. If mom stops crying, you did something right. If dad calms down, you earned safety. And so, without realizing it, your nervous system becomes the household barometer. You feel every tension before it breaks. You scan faces like radar. You live in constant readiness, not for play, but for damage control. This is how anxiety takes root long before you even know what the word means. You stop asking for help because you've learned that help doesn't come. You stop crying because your tears only make things worse. You become small, silent, useful. And on the surface, it looks like strength. Teachers call you dependable. Friends call you wise. Relatives say you'll go far someday. But beneath that competence is exhaustion. The kind that doesn't just live in your body, but in your bones. Because being the caretaker at 8 years old rewires your sense of self. You don't just act responsible. You believe your survival depends on it. And in many ways, it did. You see, the human brain is wired for attachment. Children need safety more than they need food. And when that safety isn't available, they'll trade authenticity for belonging. So you stop saying what you feel. You become whoever your parent needs you to be, the comforter, the helper, the invisible one. Because if they're okay, maybe you'll be okay too. But this survival strategy doesn't end in childhood. It follows you into adulthood, disguised as empathy, reliability, selflessness. People will love you for it. They'll call you a rock, a healer, a good listener. But deep down, you'll feel something hollow. Because every time you meet someone's needs, you silence your own. Every time you rescue, you reenact the same story. The child saving the parent, again and again and again. Maybe you notice it in your relationships. You attract people who need fixing. You fall for those who are broken, chaotic, unreachable. Because that's where your identity feels most at home. You mistake intensity for intimacy. You feel most alive when you're needed, not when you're loved. And when someone finally treats you with consistency, you feel anxious because safety feels foreign, calm feels suspicious. You don't know how to receive, only how to give. You apologize for taking up space, for having needs, for resting. You may even feel guilty for wanting more, as if joy is a luxury someone like you hasn't earned. That's not because you're broken. It's because your nervous system was trained to equate love with labor, peace with vigilance, worth with usefulness. And so you keep performing. You overfunction in every environment, at work, in friendships, in love. You fix things that aren't yours to fix. You anticipate needs no one voiced. You become the therapist in every room, the glue in every group, the one everyone leans on, and no one looks after. But eventually, the weight starts to show. You burn out. You isolate. You start resenting the very people you've spent your life rescuing. And maybe, for the first time, you start to wonder, why do I keep ending up in the same role? Why do I feel safest when I'm needed, but empty when I'm seen? Because somewhere deep inside, the child who raised their parent is still working, still on call, still believing that if they stop being useful, they'll stop being loved. That's the invisible grief of the parentified child. No one ever told you it wasn't your job. No one ever said, you get to rest now. So even as an adult, you don't stop. You clean, plan, help, fix. Because the silence after the storm still terrifies you. Stillness feels wrong. Care feels undeserved. And when someone says, you don't have to do that, it feels like a trap. Because who are you if you're not the one holding everyone else together? That's the question that haunts so many of us. You learned early that love must be earned through service. And unlearning that feels like betrayal of your family, of your survival, of the child who believed that being good was the only way to be safe. But that's the paradox of healing. To save yourself, you must finally put down the role that once saved you. The truth is, that role, the rescuer, the caretaker, the one who holds the family together, was never supposed to belong to you. You stepped into it because there was no one else. Because love, in your home, came with conditions. Because safety had to be earned. But the tragedy is this. What once protected you now imprisons you. That hyper-awareness, that need to anticipate everyone's emotions, it still runs your life. You think it's compassion, but really, it's vigilance. You think it's responsibility, but it's fear. The fear that if you stop performing, the people you love will fall apart again. And so you keep the mask on, smiling, capable, composed. While underneath, the child you were is still begging for someone to notice how tired they are. That child never stopped waiting. Waiting for the apology that never came. Waiting for someone to say, you shouldn't have had to do that. Waiting for permission to finally stop being the parent. But no one came. And maybe that's the hardest part to face. The realization that the rescue you spent your life giving others will have to come from you. It sounds cruel, but it's also liberating. Because once you accept that no one is coming, you can finally start coming for yourself. Healing starts there, not in pretending it didn't happen, but in telling the truth about what did. You were a child who had to act like an adult to survive. You did what any intelligent nervous system would do. You adapted. And adaptation is not failure. It's proof you were wired to survive. So what does healing look like? It's not glamorous. It's not even comfortable. It starts with grief. Grieving the childhood you never got to live. Grieving the birthdays you planned for everyone else but never for yourself. Grieving the innocence that was traded for responsibility. It's letting yourself feel the sadness you were too busy to feel back then. It's realizing that strong was just another word for numb. And it's weeping. Not because you're weak, but because you're finally safe enough to cry. Tears are what happen when the nervous system stops bracing for impact. They're the body's way of saying, "We made it." You might feel angry, too. Angry at the adults who weren't adults. Angry at the years you spent being the hero in a story you didn't choose. That anger is sacred. Don't rush past it, because beneath it lies truth. You were forced into a role that cost you your childhood. And acknowledging that doesn't mean you hate your parents. It means you finally understand what happened to you. Many of them were children, too, just older ones, repeating what they knew. But you have the chance to stop the inheritance. You can break the cycle not by rejecting them, but by refusing to keep living as the version of yourself who carried their weight. Healing from parentification is not about blaming. It's about witnessing. It's about turning toward that small version of you and saying what no one else ever said. You didn't deserve to hold that burden. You were just a child. You get to rest now. At first, those words might feel impossible to believe. Rest might feel like laziness. Softness might feel unsafe. But slowly, as you practice giving yourself what you gave everyone else, something begins to shift. You start to notice when you're rescuing instead of relating. You pause before saying yes out of guilt. You begin to realize that care given freely feels different than care given from fear. There will be days when you relapse into old patterns, when you overfunction, when you apologize for existing, when you feel the urge to fix what's not yours. That's okay. Healing isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. Each time you loop back, you meet the same wound with a little more awareness, a little more compassion. Because the goal isn't to kill the caretaker, it's to teach them they're allowed to rest. The part of you that learned to parent everyone else deserves parenting too. From you. So you start small. You ask yourself, what do I need right now? And instead of pushing it away, you listen. Maybe you need sleep. Maybe you need boundaries. Maybe you just need someone to say, it's okay to not be okay. And for the first time, you offer that to yourself. As you grow into this new self, something remarkable happens. The relationships around you begin to change. People who relied on you to carry their weight may pull away. Others, the ones who value reciprocity, will draw closer. You might lose roles you thought defined you. But what you gain is far greater. Freedom. Freedom to be loved without performing. Freedom to rest without guilt. Freedom to exist without earning it. That's what true adulthood looks like. Not the forced kind you were thrown into, but the kind you choose consciously with awareness and gentleness. There's a quote that says, "Children who parent their parents spend their adult lives trying to find someone to parent them." But here's the truth, that someone can be you. You can reparent yourself. You can give yourself the validation you craved. You can give yourself the safety you never had. You can build the home inside your body that you once tried to build for everyone else. This isn't about fixing the past. It's about ending its repetition. Because every time you choose to care for yourself instead of managing someone else, you rewrite the story. You show the child within you that love doesn't have to be transactional. Some days, you'll feel like you're regressing. Suddenly emotional, needy, sensitive. That's not regression. That's reunion. It's the child you left behind finally stepping out from the shadows, asking to be seen. And your job now isn't to send them away, but to sit with them. To say, you don't have to earn my love anymore. To say, you can cry, and I won't turn away. To say, you can play now. You're safe. That's how healing happens, not through perfection, but through presence. And maybe one day, you'll look back and realize that the strength you built wasn't wasted. It kept you alive. It helped you navigate chaos. But now, you can use that strength differently. Not to hold others together, but to hold yourself. Not to manage crises, but to create calm. Not to parent your parents, but to nurture the child you once were. You'll notice peace doesn't feel foreign anymore. Love doesn't feel dangerous. You'll start to breathe without bracing. You'll start to rest without guilt. That's when you'll know. You're no longer the parent to anyone's pain, but your own healing. You never should have had to grow up that fast. You never should have been the one to carry adult burdens in a child's body. But here you are, older, wiser, still standing. And now you have a choice. You can keep living as the version of you that survived. Or you can become the version that finally lives. Choose softness. Choose rest. Choose the quiet miracle of meeting your own needs before tending to the world. You were never meant to be everyone's parent. You were meant to be someone's child. And that someone is still inside you, waiting to come home. And when they do, when you finally let that child rest in your arms, you'll understand the truth that was always waiting beneath the pain. You're not broken for what you became. You're brave for surviving it. And now, you're free to become whole.